Hello, this is Anthony. Let's walk and talk. So, today we're going to have a discussion about the 5-year plan and the 10-year plan. You see, these ideas or thoughts are played out every day in the life of a human. And one of the things I think that I've experienced since the awakening is that I no longer tie myself to long-term plans. Now, some people are going to say, well, that's because you're not motivated. That's because you lack a long-term plan. And my response would be, no. The former version of me was tied into the long-term plan, had it all planned out and put great detail into it. In fact, it's interesting because, when you talk about concepts of manifestation, they talk exactly about those things, about seeing the future and feeling the future and embodying the future, and that's all fine and great. But here's where it can fail you, and here's where it creates harm. It creates harm when you allow ego, let's have a little seat here, when you allow ego to attach to your long-term plan. What do I mean by that? You see, this is part of the problem with, even not only where you're going to go in life, but even relationships. You see, I'm not sure why things changed for me. I can't tell you why it happened. I know kind of the exact moment when I started to understand this from a universal perspective. It was actually on a vacation where the former version of me, it was right after this awareness of consciousness, and I was still operating under the old software. And I had planned the trip. It was 16 days long, and I had planned every aspect of the trip, every minute aspect, down to, to the transportation and activities. And I got on the plane and I went to the location, and something switched within a day in. And what switched was I started to see and feel things differently. I started to see synchronicities all around me. I started to listen to the things and the people around me. And in doing so, something just told me to just take the plans, tear them up, throw them up in the air and say, okay, universe, I trust you. Just please give me clear guidance, and I will follow you on the path that you have set out for me. So I did so. And I will tell you that 16 days was the most amazing trip that I had ever experienced to that point in my entire life. I had done things on that trip that I never imagined I would do. I had experiences on that trip that I never imagined that I would have. And they were so profound and so deeply fulfilling that was the moment where I realized this whole 5-year plan thing is an ego construct. It's a trap. And it's a trap because it creates an identity that you're meant to follow. And the problem with that identity comes expectation. You see, ego creates expectation. And as we've talked about in the past, when you create that expectation and then the expectation doesn't meet exactly where you are in reality, suddenly there's a lot of disappointment around you. Now, we're going to take this concept and we're going to apply this concept to relationships. You see, what happens is you get in a relationship, you meet somebody, that you connect with them, you start spending time with them, you start to see that you have shared values, you start to see that you're kind of going in the same direction. And then what happens is you start planning a future together. See, this becomes very difficult when you are existing from more of a 6-month perspective versus a 5-year perspective. Why do I say 6 months? Well, to be clear, as I started following this path, the furthest now that I guess, am able to look forward or capable of looking forward is about 6 months. Why? Because things change and evolve so rapidly that to guess where I might be in 6 weeks, albeit 6 months, sometimes is a difficult concept to comprehend. But you see, this doesn't vibe into the relationship and the ego perspective of a timeline. You get with someone and you start planning out. Well, here's where we're gonna live. Here's when we're gonna get married. Here's where we're gonna have children. All of the things that couples do. Here's the problem. Again, as we've talked about in the past, most people, when they get into a relationship or when they start dating someone, they're never truly showing their authentic self. They're showing the mask. They're showing the version of the self that they maybe desire to be, but aren't yet. Maybe they're evolving into that aspect of self. And so, since they haven't evolved into that aspect of self, when you start spending more and more time with somebody, that the real person starts to appear, because they've been hiding the aspects of self that they maybe don't like about themselves or don't appreciate about themselves. So they're not being the truest version of self. Problem is, when you get into that connection and all of a sudden you start thinking that the person that you're with is the person that they've shown you, and then you start planning out these aspects of your future together. You start planning out that 5-year, 10-year plan, and you start putting into motion and solidifying these things. What happens is that when it starts to become obvious that maybe this person isn't for you, it makes it even more difficult to end the relationship. It makes it even more difficult to let go and move on. Why? Because your ego has built an entire identity around the 5-year plan that you've imagined in your head together. So not only are you're having to let go of the person that you've gotten used to, that you've gotten comfortable with, that you spent so much time with, that you've built some rapport and connection with, you also have to overcome the version of you that you thought you were going to be in 5 years in that moment. That is why change becomes so difficult. That is why ending a bad relationship can become very difficult. This doesn't change for anybody in any way, shape, or form. The only difference is when you cut down the timeline, you're cutting down the ego's grip on your identity tied with that version of the relationship. And when you understand that, you see the benefit behind it. It's not because you don't want to build a future with somebody, of course you do, but the future is built with someone moment by moment, with the authentic and vulnerable version of that person, not with the mask that they wear, not with the image that they're projecting, not with the version of them that they aren't yet and may never be. You see, there are many people in life that you can share belief systems with, that you can share values with, but that you don't share commonality in the future, that you don't share commonality in who you are at the core, because you're not maybe allowing that person and they're not allowing you to see those things. You see, in this, and let's call it the 5-year relational trap or the 10-year relational trap, however far you choose to project out a future with somebody, is what keeps you locked into a dynamic that may be toxic or unhealthy for you and or them as well. You see, I think it comes down to when two people spend time together, they can love each other very deeply. But also understand that even in loving each other very deeply, if you're in a specific dynamic, like let's say an anxious and avoidant dynamic, a push-pull dynamic, it is not going to be a fulfilling dynamic. It is not a healthy dynamic. It's not a secure dynamic. Trauma bonding with somebody is not a healthy dynamic. These things are not relationships that last for years to come. These are relationships that are there to help, meant for you to see yourself in the mirror and to heal the things within you. Now, you can heal with that person, as we talked about before, but they have to be willing to do the work as well. And you have to be honest with yourself to say, I'm going to do the work with myself. As we talked about in the past, you can't save anybody. You can only save yourself. Now, when someone's going through the healing journey, you can sit with them, you can comfort them, you can have empathy and compassion and be with them. But if they aren't doing the work, you're just spinning your wheels. You're just adding more time to the identity of the relationship that isn't going to survive. And as long as you continue to hold on to that 5-year plan, you're going to make it even more difficult when the inevitable time comes that it's time for your past to diverge. It's going to take longer for you to heal, forgive, and love self. But how do you feel about that? Do you think that it's that the 5-year plan puts you in a bit more of a trap, or do you think that that's something that you feel like you need on your journey? I'm curious. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm truly grateful. And until I talk to you again, peace, love, light. Hope you have the most amazing day.